93.7 The Ticket. Live from the 93.7 The Ticket studios in the heart of Lincoln, America. This is Inside the Huddle with Nebraska Football Hall of Famer Jay Foreman.
Fires a pass, and it's intercepted by the Huskers at the 25, Jay Foreman. And Foreman takes it down to the 19-yard line of Oklahoma. Another big play by the Blackshirts.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Sponsored by Advanced Medical Imaging.
.601 Pioneers Boulevard. Look them up on social media and feel free to go over there because they can help you with all your pain needs. So this is Jay Foreman with my man Harrison inside the huddle. Another week past, fully, I guess, being able to process, and I always say to regurgitate the Northwestern situation. I think we're going to go into the linebacker breakdown of the team. I think that's going to be the biggest thing besides the offensive line.
You think that's the biggest strength or biggest
no,
problem?
It's good. Well, not a problem, but
concern, maybe
a little bit of everything.
Okay.
Concern, not really a problem, but I think it's all predicated on health and continuity. And then same thing with the offensive line. Obviously a health thing, and their health is – I think it's totally different. Offensive line is getting them healthy enough back to play up to hopefully to their potential so they can gel. Linebacker is – keeping guys healthy, and then where does everybody fit in this 3-3-5? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so it's because I think that in the 3-3-5, your three base linebackers, your outside guy, and kind of whatever you want to call it, the hybrid are the ones that I think make the defense go. It is versus like you run a 4-3 in a blanket 3-4. It starts up front. Now, granted, in this 3-3-5, it does start up front, but when you're putting multiple mid-size to some smaller size guys that are football players out there, your second level has to be really, really good. And so if you look over time in the 3-3-5, even back in San Diego State where Tony White got it, got the idea. Well, first of all, he played in it, so that's where he had his success and first idea or first glimpse of it. Over time, the 3-3-5 is a linebacker-led defense. So if you look at San Diego State, you look at BYU when they had like Van Noy and those guys, and TCU when they first burst on the scene a few years back in the Rose Bowl against Wisconsin, I think it was, and they had those linebackers that were putting in work. And then even TCU this year, the linebackers and hybrids and defensive backs, and and I know I've talked to a former Eden Prairie alum that's came in there as kind of a big corner, moved to safety. Now he's at a linebacker right now, and he's about 205, 210. So the evolution of their defense is predicated on speed and guys that really live and do good things in the weight room. And they are a Big 12 team. But to get a glimpse into a 3-3-5, not in particular Tony White's, just to kind of get some background on it, I did that and talked to him about it. So came to the conclusion that the linebackers is going to be a huge deal, and it's going to be the benchmark of if they play well, the defense generally play well, because in order for them to be successful, they got to be extremely disciplined and physical, mentally, at another level when they play teams coming down the stretch. You think about Wisconsin and Iowa back to back, or even the first game of the season. Minnesota's going to test all your principles. They're going to test your internal principles. Are you really willing to stay in the fight that long? And can you do it for 3-4 quarters, with multiple running backs, a huge tight end for them, and they have extreme amount of depth at wide receiver now with a quarterback that's somewhat mobile and can throw. So right out the gate, you just never know what you're going to get with Colorado. And then you play, multifaceted different teams, and they'll test you. Obviously Louisiana Tech, you're going to expect them to pass it. Northern Illinois, you're going to expect like one back and kind of spread you out and try to hit you with some kind of Purdue kind of runs, right? Get on the edges, see if they can test your principles and your technique. So it's a big year for that linebacker group and Coach Dvorak and Coach White, because he's a former linebacker, he's defensive coordinator, so he's going to obviously want to make sure that they're, up to snuff. And then where I read an article last night. They ranked these coaches it's from 0 to 5, 5 being the worst. Who's on the hot seat? It's pretty interesting. Obviously, Kirby Smart and Nick Saban were 0. Matt Rule is a 1. I think he's a 0. You just got here.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because, the Tennessee, the decision on Tennessee came down. They had to vacate 11 wins from 2019 and 20.
Yep.
$8 million fine, which is essentially a slap on the wrist. But when you think of it, just went right into this article of like who's on the hot seat, based on those over 200 violations.
Yeah, that was the most they've ever added up.
Right.
To.
Yeah, that's pretty extensive.
Number.
And then you get a slap on the wrist. Everybody in the Big Ten, from Michael Wilbon and Desmond Howard, when Nebraska had their little deal with Scott Frost and the former analysts, thought we need to be kicked out of the Big Ten. You don't hear them much talking about Tennessee needs to be kicked out of SEC because I think this is business as usual. They're just dumb enough to get caught. But I think it's good to address that, obviously, and then, look at some of the coaches that are on the hot seat, and where they're at. And it's interesting how they move forward. And so that, as we get closer here, Harrison, the college football landscape is starting to heat up. It's no more playtime. And I always talk about it during the week on Old School, a few times here on Inside the Huddle, that after spring ball, you can kind of, and when you have a spring game now where it's more of a production and a thank you to the fans, I think it's kind of like, I don't know if you guys had it when, like a jamboree. So when I first moved to Minnesota and started getting up there on varsity, they had like a lake conference jamboree. So it was like, it seemed like 20 teams where you'd go and you'd play, a quarter against one school, then you'd go to the other side of the field, play, and it was kind of like, and you'd have a pretty good crowds there because you'd have 8 different, schools there. So that's what the spring game is to me. It's kind of like a jamboree, show you, hey, look, Harrison's got, bigger, faster, stronger, everything you read or, from about him online.
Mm-hmm.
This is where he's at. This is who's done well. This is, you can kind of, see that, but it's not a game. It's not, it's competitive, but very controlled, and as it should be, right? But you can get caught up in that,
mm-hmm.
Because it's
like the summer league almost,
right? That's exactly
mm-hmm.
what it is. And that could be your kind of, you go to, winter conditioning, spring ball hard, kind of tapers off, and this is your payoff, and then you could be like, okay, well, I have arrived, or this is the way it should be. And then if you ride that wave of post spring, ecstasy or whatever,
mm-hmm.
that can lead into, well, some of these other guys are really training hard, and that's individually within your team, and more importantly, other teams where they're, if you don't turn the page very quickly, you can get caught left behind. And then now, as you get closer to the season, you have to realize this is, all the fun and games are over. Dropping a pass in the spring, means a lot, especially if you're trying to, me and you are competing, but it's not as big as if I drop a pass on 3rd and 6 and we need this first down to close out a game. Then you have to really evaluate, where did that come from? Did I only catch 50 passes a day during the summer when I could have stayed an extra 20 minutes and catch 100? Did I miss workouts with the quarterback, because I had other things and obligations to do because of, hey, I did good in spring. Every time they talk about the receivers, in this case, they're talking about Jay Foreman and Harrison.
Mm-hmm.
We're riding around thinking we got it under control, right? We're, because they're, because again, even in Phil Steele's book that we have here, like sometimes, and I wouldn't say he's lazy, but you keep getting articles retweeted, and then your family and friends see it, and so they can kind of get in your head and say, it's like, okay, well, you're just seeing your name in there, they're going to assume that you're the top 4 you're going to play.
Yep.
Well, there's guys coming up the pipe that have been working, and if you haven't been working, now pretty much the hay's in the barn. And this is where, when you go to fall camp, you might not be getting the same amount of reps as you got in the spring, because you got to get ready for the season. And Minnesota game is going to come up very quickly. And in particularly the linebackers is going to be interesting because of, it's really interesting to me because of, I guess, the seniority and the the couple years of production. Where's Nick Heinrich, right?
Mm-hmm.
What has Luke Reimer done to become a better leader and find ways to kind of tweak his workouts to be healthy all season?
Mm-hmm.
And who's going to step up? Where's MJ Sherman going to play? Is he going to be off the ball? But we saw Jamari Butler play a little bit in the middle. Who else is going to step? Is it Garrett Snodgrass? Is it somebody that hadn't really gotten a realistic chance before? Or is it an incoming freshman like Fields or Dylan Rogers? Are you able to get past the threshold of the complimentary 4 games? And what I call the complimentary 4 games is a freshman, which I would have loved to have. You're a freshman. We can get you in the game, especially when we were playing or when I was there. We're beating teams pretty bad. So
you got a nice cushion to go in and get some reps.
Yeah. Who cares if not who cares, but I'm getting that out of my system,
mm-hmm.
and I'm not losing a redshirt year. I'm actually getting, again, a glimpse into my strengths, weaknesses, and I'm getting playing time on a big stage. So if I make a huge leap after those 4 games, say I'm redshirted, when I come as a redshirt freshman, I'm 3 steps ahead versus like for me, I went, for me in particular, I got here. Me and Coach Osborne decided I needed a red shirt, which I was more than happy. I think I led that conversation. That's the first time I ever led a conversation with Coach Osborne. Did I ever tell you this story?
No, let's hear it.
It's funny. So, again, athletes and high school athletes have not changed from the test of time, at least from when I was here. And this is all I can only go up.
Okay.
Everybody, you come in, and we read all the articles about each other. Look, we didn't have any YouTube or anything like that. So you just think you're going off the
Omaha World Herald.
Right, Omaha World Herald. I think it was Blue Chips back then. You guys, and here's what my dad told me. He said, listen, kids from Florida, what did he say? Florida, California, Texas, they think they invented football in high school. They're always, they think,
you can see it in the stadiums down south.
Right.
Like they take it to that.
They think
to some credit, they take it to another level.
Yeah.
That's
and
what the SEC
a lot of those
is.
kids come ready because they get to play year round. But he's like, they think that they're superior to you in football. Everybody's an All-American, but it doesn't matter till you get here. So the conversation as freshmen, now mind you, Nebraska just got hosed against Florida State.
Mm-hmm.
Tommy Frazier and Lawrence Phillips and everybody on defense is coming back. Here we are as some freshmen coming from high school. Now, granted, Grant Wistrom was ready.
Yeah.
Right? You could tell he was a USA Today, I think, Defensive Player of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the big deal then, right? So you kind of assumed that he was going to come to Nebraska and play, not start, because he wasn't better than Dwayne Harrison and Dante Jones. So we, and everybody's talking about, who's good, where you fit in, how many reps you get in, and so forth and so on. And everybody's like, I want to play as a freshman. Man, listen, I saw Christian Peter and Troy Dumas, and I had never lifted a weight. You know what I'm saying? I could play football now, right?
Yeah,
I could play football. That's one thing I could like. I was a running back in high school, played a couple games at safety. That's how I got recruited. And Coach Darlington didn't think I was going to be good enough. Well, we had recruited safeties that from high school, from like we had Trey Creighton, Eric Warfield was a prop, but then Octavius McFarland. We had we had some. He kind of filled his allotment of defensive backs and corners, and I was kind of an athlete. And he was, and they had some, Mike Minner and all those guys already. So I would have been I would have made my way in there. I think I would have done fine. Well, then Coach Steele didn't have anybody to coach. So he moved me a linebacker, What do you think? I'm like, hey, I'm getting one-on-one coaching. I watched enough of Dick Buckus on, highlight tapes and Jack Lambert. I could do it. I used to throw my pillow up and go tackle my pillows. I could do it, and I was a hitter in high school, and I could run and hit, and I knew the game, and because I've watched football I've watched NFL. I used to watch football all day and night.
So that's really how it happened for you. That's how
and then that's how I was, just by luck. Well, first of all, let's peel this thing back.
Okay.
I could, Coach Osborne was like, I like you at running back. But Jay Foreman didn't like what I did like. I saw Lawrence Phillips and I saw myself, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, he a freshman. He ain't going nowhere because that's a bad dude, right? And then I was like, they got some other dudes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, I'm fast, but.
You read the room.
I saw it on live. I was like, it'd be 4 years before I'd be ready to do that, right?
I think that's what players need, though.
Because I was I was a different type of running back though. Than Lawrence was next level. When he left college, he was 230, ran like a 4.3 flat.
Mm-hmm.
He would look at weights. You know what I mean? It was just totally different, right? Just way superior athlete, and I was fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Coach Brown was like, "Hey, man, you can score." Because in my offense, we had a running back that went to Michigan State, and the quarterback went to Michigan, and then I was the running back. But if we ever needed to score, they put me on receiver. He's like, "I like you at receiver," and I looked at the Phil Steele book or their media guy. Abdul Muhammad and Corey Dixon led the team with like 32 receptions and like 20.
Yeah,
bruh. I grew up watching Miami and Florida State and Notre Dame. That's like the tight ends numbers.
Yeah.
And so, they doing a lot of cut blocking. And I was like, Jay Foreman too pretty to be doing that, man. That's a waste of time. So then I moved to defense, and Coach Steele was there, didn't have anybody to coach. And he coached me as a Sam linebacker, which is outside linebacker, and then the rest is history. But back to the story is that a lot of freshmen, even back then, were worried about if they were going to play it as freshmen. Me and my dad have frank conversations. I played basketball all summer. And I mean, went to one football camp, but I played basketball. I love football, and I could roll out of bed and dominate in football, or be obviously Division I football player. But I never lifted weights. It wasn't a big deal back then. And back then it was like if you lifted weights, it mess up your shot. So
was that an eye opener when you got to Nebraska? Because Osborne really got that weightlifting program humming.
They had sent us a weight program.
Okay, so you did have one in the summer to work on.
I didn't do it though.
Okay,
you know what I'm saying? I got it, and I was like, man, I ain't lifting no. My whole thing is like, I told Coach Osborne, this is natural. Jay Foreman don't need no weights, right? That's that, right?
I'd laugh. There's some guys that actually get away with it though. That are
right,
different.
But I was dumb enough to really think I could. And the reality hit me is when I saw the varsity report, and I was like, oh, yeah. Hey, and here's the funny thing about it. So my uncle and my grandfather was alive at the time, and my dad was like, listen, your last name is Foreman. You ain't backing down from nobody. Period. I don't care if you ever play. So I'm coming in and I'm gonna play hard. That's number one, and I'm gonna do. And you're lucky enough if you know football, and I could kind of get a beat on things. You're out making plays, and so we had our scrimmage. First kind of big scrimmage. Went out there, man, and I was active. I had like 14 tackles, 14 factors, because Coach Samuel did a thing of a factor sheet, per play. So the percentage was high, but I was exhausted after that. And I knew going back to the dorms, even though I made plays, I was like, I'm not physically ready. You know what I mean? To do it mentally. I knew I was.
But you were feeling it physically.
Physically, I was way behind. Because I would get off blocks, but it would be like I wasn't getting off blocks clean. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The strength wasn't there. The stamina wasn't there. So Coach Osborne, I'll never forget where it's kind of like you break camp, and then you're still practicing hard, of course, with Coach Osborne. You're still kind of into it mode, but it's a little bit less. And I'm assuming he did it with every go and kind of talk to you and kind of feel where you're at. Because his thing is, if you really wanted to play as a freshman, I'm sure they would do it. Or maybe, I don't know. I mean, I didn't have it. And he came up to me. He's like, look, you've done well enough on special teams and defense to, play. He's like, and kept going. He's going in the spiel, and I'm assuming he was going to get to the red shirt. I said, let's coach. I need the red shirt. Let's keep this conversation real quick. I'm cool with red shirting. I appreciate this conversation. There's probably about 20 other freshmen you talk to. I've already talked to it with my dad. Because there was no upside for me to play. I got a ton of work in practice. I got way more reps. I think that's what helped me start as a freshman. I went against Lawrence Phillips every day for a whole year, and we practiced hard versus getting a rep or two on defense and then forcing me in there and then waiting to see if I get in against some scrubs. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, but again, there's freshmen right now on the roster that probably think they need to play and they're just not ready. And that's the way it is because even though Nebraska was 4-8 last year, it's a big step up from high school. And it's a big step up for some guys that were left over from the team to the amount of work and expectations that they were getting to before. So everybody's on an even playing field. And as you get closer to camp, the sphincter muscle starts to get tighter, and the reality starts to become. It's like the walls start closing in on you.
I think that running back room is going to get it because that room's kind of been who's been that guy,
right? And who is
going to be the turnover,
right?
And I mean, there's a lot of names in there. I don't think anyone's too certain. So that room for a group of guys that the sphincter is getting tight, that's a group right there that I'm almost positive they're still looking for that guy.
Yeah, well, and there's the stipulations are different as well, and we'll get a little bit in here in a second. We got 3 more minutes, and it's no different than the linebacker room. Right, when you think about it, it's the second level of the offense, second level of the defense. It's all the same, right? Injuries, right? So when you look at it, okay, so if you just want to go person for person, Anthony Grant is the holdover and your most productive player. I think he was 3rd team All Big Ten, maybe?
Yeah, 3rd team.
Okay, and then you got Luke Reimer, your holdover, most productive player, 3rd team All Big Ten. Apples to apples, right? Even exchange. Then the second guy is Gabe Ervin. Injury prone, coming off an injury, had a good off season. What's he going to be able to do? Is he going to answer the bell? Nick Heinrich, okay, coming off an injury. Or if you want to throw an MJ Sherman in there, a prove it year for Gabe, prove it year for MJ getting a realistic chance. Then you got Ramir. You can say him and Nick. Then you can just go down, Emmett Johnson. What are we going to get from him? That could be is that a Gifford or is that a Javen Wright? Kind of like the Swiss Army knife type of guy. So can he step up into a bigger role? What game will he be a big factor in? So they're replication of each other. So nobody should feel comfortable sitting down. I mean, granted, Luke Reimer and Nick and MJ Sherman and Anthony Grant and maybe Gabe Ervin should sit down and say, as long as I handle my business, I'm going to be playing. Which,
I think it's theirs to lose at this point. But you still want to see that development.
They shouldn't be thinking that they arrived. They're not Blake Corum.
It's a good answer. Yeah.
They're not Blake Corum or Edwards, right? They're not Henderson at Ohio State. They're not the 2 running backs from Penn State, Singleton and all those guys. They're just not. And that doesn't mean they can't be as good as – they're just not as cemented as them. Because the situations are different. It's a new coach, a new coaching staff, a new running back coach, a new coaching staff, new offense, and new expectations. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, it should be very, very competitive. It should be way more intense when they get into camp. Because if the expectations have changed internally, that means within themselves, it should come out in how they have prepared and how they play. If they are choosing to go around the same like practice habits X, Y, and Z, you'll start to hear that some of these guys are getting caught up. They're getting bypassed, and you're like, how does so and so that's been playing for 2 years, Harrison's playing the same amount of reps or like series, just say defense is him. Well, it'll be because they haven't raised their expectations, which is then leads to their work and then their practice habits, and then if your practice habits and work hasn't raised and everybody else is, then you look at just like, oh, you got bypassed. Well, no, you just kept doing the same thing and you're just getting by. And those guys there's an old saying, I'll say this before we go to break. The get by guys just getting by, they usually get left and they usually get cut. That's what it was, because listen, when I came in as a rookie, Bruce Smith is like, hey, one of the things is, when if you want to make this team, don't be a get by guy. I'm like, what does that mean? He's like, just getting by, do more. He's like, you're not me. And he was very frank. He looked, literally, his locker was right. I was in between him and Thurman. And he's like, hey, you want to learn how to make it? And Thurman would be sitting there. He's like, don't be a get by guy. You know how many guys have been here just with trying to get by? He's like, I have this conversation with every pretty much rookie that's here. Don't be a guy that's just getting by. And once he told me that, I was like, I never left the facility.
Oh, it clicked after that.
Yeah. I was like, well, because I want to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So it's leadership. I mean, that's probably the one and only times that he talked to me besides for me to help, keep the money on the plane, for when they're playing Boo-Ray or some game back in the back. But it was a good lesson. Yeah. And I appreciate it. I never forgot it. So first good segment, Inside the Huddle. Again, brought to you by Advanced Medical Imaging. We're going to go to a quick break. We're going to dive into a little bit more of the Tennessee and recap the Northwestern, and then we'll dive into some running back room and linebacker room some more. Jay Foreman, Harrison, we'll be right back. This is former Husker and NFL linebacker Jay Foreman. For years, I've suffered from degenerative problems in both of my ankles, but thanks to a thorough and thought-out plan provided by Advanced Medical Imaging, I was able to get my life back with the least amount of pain as possible. While working through multiple options, the team of physicians at Advanced Medical Imaging were there to answer any questions I had. If you're experiencing any pain at all and want to get your life back, go to amimaging.com or give them a call at 402-484-6677. Advanced Medical Imaging, located at 7601 Pioneers Boulevard.
Old School with DP and J.
As long as it's taken for him to build up that program to be pretty successful by their standards, and look, pretty successful by Big Ten West standards, you have to take that into accountability. You can't be an impulsive, in-the-moment type of decision maker, because how you handle Pat Fitzgerald could stymie you from hiring, because those coaches talk.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
I always had to be so good, no one could ignore me. Carve my path with data and drive. But some people only see who I am on paper. The paper ceiling, the limitations from degree screens to stereotypes that are holding back over 70 million stars. Workers skilled through alternative routes rather than a bachelor's degree. It's time for skills to speak for themselves. Find resources for breaking through barriers at tearthepaperceiling.org. Brought to you by Opportunity at Work and the Ad Council.
Serve Nebraska believes that volunteers are part of what makes Nebraska great. Each year, the Step Forward Awards honors volunteers from across the state who serve their communities in outstanding ways. We hope you'll join us this year at the Step Forward Awards luncheon on October 27th in Omaha. Help us thank volunteers with a celebration to remember. To register, visit serve.nebraska.gov and click Register Now. We hope to see you there. Paid for by Serve Nebraska. Aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
When you're high, you feel different. You think different, you talk different, you draw different, you listen to music different, but you probably knew that. Problem is, you also drive different, and not in a good way. That's why driving high is illegal everywhere. So if you're high, just don't drive. Make a plan to get a sober ride. Because if you feel different, you drive different. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
When it comes to making plans, you are the best. What about those round trips, which are perfect on your way there and perfect on your way back? Or those meetings with friends, surprise parties, camps, birthdays. The same way you plan for the important moments, start planning to protect you and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Sign up for local weather and emergency alerts. Prepare an emergency kit and make a family communications plan. Get started at ready.gov/plan.
Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Don't let biased algorithms or degree screens or exclusive professional networks or stereotypes. Don't let anything keep you from discovering the half of the workforce who are stars. Workers skilled through alternative routes rather than a bachelor's degree. It's time to tear the paper ceiling and see the stars beyond it. Find out how you can make stars part of your talent strategy at tearthepaperceiling.org. Brought to you by Opportunity at Work and the Ad Council.
Adoption of teens from foster care is a topic not enough people know about, and we're here to change that. I'm April Dinwiddie, host of the new podcast, Navigating Adoption, presented by Adopt US Kids. Each episode brings you compelling real-life adoption stories told by the families that live them with commentary from experts. Visit adoptuskids.org/podcast or subscribe to Navigating Adoption, presented by Adopt US Kids. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Children and Families and the Ad Council.
This is how we do every day. We be grinding, and if you wanna come and test us,
if you love them enough to turn off your music and pretend like their music is your music.
This is Mommy's jam.
Then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Let's play it again.
Check today at nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Inside the Huddle with Jay Foreman, sponsored by Advanced Medical Imaging.
We are back. Inside the Huddle, brought to you by Advanced Medical Imaging, located 7601 Pioneers Boulevard. Dr. Finn, Dr. Razdat, I want to thank them personally, taking good care of me and point me in the right direction. I just saw them last week, and then I have to see them again this week, or I think it'll be in the next week. They would do a really good job of diagnosing or helping you through the process. For me, obviously, with some chronic and lifelong stuff from football. They're not quick to, introduce. I always say a lot of doctors these days, Harrison, introduce themselves, shake your hand, bring in somebody else, say, hey, your operation's here about an hour.
That's about pretty accurate.
Pretty accurate. Have you walk around looking like Frankenstein so they can keep you coming in. They try to push that off as much as possible, but then they do have some straight up conversations with you as far as what could be coming down the pipe. But they've done a really good job. It's been a really good blessing for me, just because I've had some serious stuff come up in the last 6 months, and just when and I'll say this, just we talk about injuries, right, for these young kids, and they recover a lot better than a 47-year-old washed up football player. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they were talking to me about football, and I was like, I can't believe I retired like 16 years ago after 2007 2008 season or whatever. 16 years ago. I can't believe it.
Do you think, does it make sense, if you go back 16 years, you see yourself playing?
I can't even imagine it, just because I can't. Well, and the reason why is because when it's humid and hot, like it was, or here right now, I'm thinking all I think about this is what I could run all day with pads on. We'd be out there in 2 days. Now, granted, it would be a little bit later, but still hot as all get out in Houston when it's 96 degrees and it's 90% humidity, and you're out there with full pads and you're out there, trying to play for, your NFL life. It's hard to imagine, but it is what it is. But time goes by quick, because you get in that cycle of football season's over, off season, football season. Next thing you know, 2 years has passed by. So, anyways, I want to thank them, because these kids are, they got some stuff and going down the pipe, and then for me, they pointed me in the right direction. But we're back to it, and we talked. We'll put a bow on this running back room. I want to ask you, Harrison, and I guess I'll give my opinion first. I just think that going the top three orders, top three, depth chart. I think Anthony Grant will start the season off. I think that I think Anthony Grant is all just himself. Accountability, doing the little things, and staying on track. And he must have done a good job of that, because if he was having a little rough time at the beginning, but you haven't heard a peep about him lately. So I think his ability to make people miss and to get some hard yards of physicality, I think people aren't recognizing. So I think he'll be a starter. I think Gabe Irvin will play a role in kind of like the
he'll be the
battering ram, kind of the physical, take a little bit of pressure off of Anthony. And then the third is going to be interesting. That's where it's all going to kind of, is it Ramir? Does Emmett Johnson take a next level? Because he's a pretty physical runner. Who's that third back? It's kind of like the backup quarterback. I think that's going to be the big.
I still feel like it's Ramir.
Yeah.
He seems like Bottle and the Lightning, that we still fall. There is, I want to say it was last year, maybe 2 years ago against Minnesota. He had an awesome play, and it was just a real quick play. But he hasn't. If you think about the years, he really hasn't had too many opportunities.
Right.
But when he has played, I've seen a lot of good stuff. To
yeah.
me, he's that third guy. My hope is that Matt Rule is finding a way to, if it is truly lightning in a bottle, find some way to get him on there out on the field somewhere. But I still think it's going to be Grant, and then probably Gabe Irvin's going to get another shot.
Right.
Because he doesn't have any reason, at least unless what the practice looks like. Looking at last year, I still want to see more of him as well.
Yeah, and the thing is with Ramir is you could come in at number 3, battling for 3, and end up being your 1B.
Yeah.
If Gabe doesn't step up or get nicked up a little bit, Ramir,
he's got a different running style too than Gabe and Grant.
Right.
That'll help him out.
And 2 years ago he did a really good job behind an offensive line that wasn't performing well of taking what the defense was giving him, doing the simple things. If they, making a cut, getting 4 yards, keeping the offense on time, ahead of the chains, and that's what you need sometimes when you're trying to build some continuity up front. So, I think that's where it's going to be. It'll be interesting to see who really steps up, though, from the lower depths, because the running back thing is, you can have one freak somebody jumps on you, you got a little bit of a nick up, you can get a stinger, and the next thing you know, you got to step up. It's one thing, and I always say this: going from a backup, okay, to starter is totally different. It seems nice, it does, and because you're actually showing up to the game without any, like, I wouldn't say obligations, but without any pressure. There isn't, because if you're the starter, say you're the starter, right, and I'm the backup, I'm not out there first play. They haven't been preparing for me for 6 days. He's a backup. He's decent.
That's a full
when you're a backup,
report.
I miss a tackle. Well, you made the backup miss. You fumble, backup running back, or you go from 5 carries a game to I need you to carry 20, and making the right read 20 times. It's a big difference. Physically, it's different. Mentally, it's different. How they gun for you is different. And so it's going to be interesting to see how much ground Gabe Ervin makes. It is. And it's right there for him. So it isn't like he's got to like move heaven and earth. It's there for him.
Yeah. I'm curious to see, how fast Matt Rule, I'm not to say pull the plug, but how quick he is to change it up. Like if he has guys not hitting the hole, cutting back too much, trying to flip it the other way, extend plays instead of just hitting the hole. Because Grant, but he's still a great running back. But there was a few times last season where I could tell he got in that habit. Keep trying to cut it back instead of just hitting the hole and taking the 3 yards that were there in front of you.
And a little bit of that has to do with the play calling, the way that the line was blocking. Yeah. And so you kind of always are looking for
the whole thing too.
Yeah, looking for the big play. And that comes down to coaching, right? So that's going to come down to the new running back coach setting the expectations. This is what we need, and hammering that every day during the week and building upon that. If they do that, they'll be just fine. It's Anthony Grant's last year, so I think that it's going to be.
I think he's going to be the bell cow. He's going to have the opportunity to be the bell cow.
Yeah, he's going to. I mean, he had no choice.
Yeah,
and so, but I think the big thing is how much ground Gabe Ervin makes on him. Is there a lot? Is it realistically? And I'll say this: Gabe Ervin as a freshman, he looked well. He was more than ready to go. Had the freak injury down there at Oklahoma. I think he's had a really good offseason from start to finish, and I envision that's going to pay off. But it's going to be a big deal what he does, what Emmett Johnson does, and what Ramir does. And and if they got to make every day count. And then just to put another bow on the linebackers, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with a guy like Mekhi Guyver, right? Have you made a step physically as far as getting in better shape? Then you got John Bullock, he's in the Phil Steele magazine. I mean, you got to think he went from a guy just running down sparingly on kickoffs, punt. He gonna play. Just at the end of the day, look at the reps first of all, what was coming out of spring ball, reps during spring game. You don't get in these magazines by accident. They talk to somebody. So he's going to play. How's that going to shake out? You got to think of like a Michael Booker Jr., him moving the linebacker, being very, very active. These are guys that would have just been caught in a numbers game as a safety corner, wherever they were at prior. And with this 3-3-5 expanded everybody's horizon. I think the big asterisk or the big tell-all is, and it has nothing to do with if he's going to play good. It's the health of Javen Wright. If Javen Wright is healthy, he brings a dynamic to the team of being. He's gotten taller since he's got to college.
Yeah, if he can be there athletically, he's what you envision a 3-3-5.
Right, 6'5", 215. He's only a junior.
I think his wingspan's like 6'6", 6'7".
I would even continue to press him to get bigger. And then you're thinking of like a Simmons or somebody, a guy that could be like your eraser. It's just healthy, and it's nothing healthy that he can. It's just kind of getting his issues under control. So it's gonna be pretty. The competition is gonna be thick in there, and who's gonna be the leaders? You'd like to see Luke Reimer and Heinrich's gonna be a little bit longer because based on coming off the ACL, but I know he's working hard. But Luke Reimer, do you kind of hold your head above water with Jamari Butler inside, or Bullock or whoever? You know what I'm saying? Because Luke Reimer isn't a middle linebacker. He's effective as a run and hit linebacker. Who's going to be the guy in the middle? That's going to be until Nick is back healthy. You know what I'm saying? And if he is healthy, then, how much do you put him on like a pitch count? Nothing wrong with that. So, but those two groups really will be in-depth looks, and it, hopefully that's what a lot of that and backup quarterback coming out of camp, what they're talking about. But we got about 4 minutes left, and you talk about the Tennessee ruling. And
yeah, it's over 200 something. Well, I can't remember what the total number was, but
it was over 200 violations.
Yeah.
And a
it was 217, somewhere around there.
A majority of those violations, the head coach knew about and was okay with, or fostered, as they like to say. The famous thing is he admitted to giving a family some extra benefits, which was cash in a McDonald's bag. I wonder if, did it have grease in there? Did he have, did you leave the fries at the bottom? Among numerous things, he got fired. And then also for him, he has a 6-year show cause, right?
6-year show cause? I don't know if it was that long, was it?
It's for Pruitt. Jeremy Pruitt has a 6-year show cause, and I don't even know what that means. But 6 years is quite a long time for it to be under the micro. That's pretty much on coaching probation, right? He's suspended.
The penalty is intended to prevent a coach from escaping punishment for violations. So let's see.
Does that mean he can't coach for 6 years, or he can't? He can't. He has to probably be paid a little bit less.
He can't. Basically, he can't take another job by merely signing and taking another job. He can't get out of the money. So basically, it just ties him to the money,
to what he owes.
Yeah, what he owes. Like he can't get out of it no matter what.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Essentially, take a break or pay it back. And how bad you want to coach. And so
So to clear it up even more, so the university cannot hire a coach or recruiter without NCAA approval during the length of the 6. So they have to go through the NCAA
process and stuff like that.
So that's what it means.
So he would have to do some things, and if he really wants to coach, he'd probably need to be getting on that right now.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's ways around it. You could probably be an analyst for a while, but at the end of the day, if you're wanting to get back to be a linebacker coach, which he was before, defensive coordinator, which he was really, really good at.
Yeah.
Obviously was horrible as a head coach, and really stupid as a head coach because you got caught doing things with probably everybody's doing in some form or fashion. He needs to go back and figure it out. So it'll be interesting with Tennessee. The big thing is everybody's like the $8 million. For you people out there, one, they could either call a donor, number one. Number two, they have it in the bank. Number three, they aren't banned from going to bowl games. So what I mean by that is, so when a team goes to a bowl game, that's essentially a year's worth of bowl money. If they have and Tennessee had a pretty good year last year.
Yep.
And they are going to have a good year this year. They're really not losing out on anything. None of the present coaching staff or players are being held accountable. The one interesting thing is some of the players that were on that team get extra eligibility back because of I was reading it, they get eligibility back. So it'd be interesting to see if you see some guys, pop up out of there. Hey, the linebacker Henry Atu, who got drafted, was on that team with Jeremy Pruitt, transferred to Alabama, and obviously got drafted this year. He left just right there. So we'll see what the aftermath of that stuff is. I think it's a slap on the wrist.
I mean, it really hurts Pruitt more than he's basically just locked down for 6 years.
Right, and it hurts him. It pretty much saying this is what this is your plan that you devised. You were doing it over 2 years, right? That's why they're vacating those 11 wins, and you didn't stop it, and you actually added on to it. So we're going to suspend you for 6 years.
I wonder why it took so long to if they're waiting for that many allegations to build up, or because they probably 217 total. That's how much it was.
Yeah, well, you want to come. I think what they're doing is building their case.
Yep.
And then negotiating, and then you came to some sort of conclusion because you're negotiating with Jeremy Pruitt, you're negotiating with the university, you're negotiating with anybody that was employed then in the athletic department. And you're also going in and evaluating, is this something that's been going on prior, during Pruitt, and then after? So it's extensively. It's a lot of money, essentially, that they cost the NCAA, cost the university. And Jeremy Pruitt, quite frankly, cost himself, because when he got fired, I'm sure he didn't get any money to go away. And maybe they did. But Tennessee at that time, if you remember, right before we go to break, is they were going to hire Greg Schiano. And I didn't even know Greg Schiano was on the Penn State staff when Joe Paterno didn't have anything to do with it. His name's not Joe Paterno or Jerry Sandusky, but the student body or the masses really got him a deal that was done, made it to where Tennessee couldn't hire him. And so the athletic department kind of, was in flux. So Tennessee's reeling. We've seen that before. We've seen it, in the Big Ten. Northwestern's going through it right now. There's not a university that's either successful or not that's absolved from having issues internally. That's just the way it is. You got to think Georgia's going through stuff right now. Kirby Smart just came out and said speeding is an option, is a problem in our program. They just had a kid that the day of that they were having a hearing because they got sued by the staffers that died, unfortunately. The family, the university and the athletic department were at court. A player got caught going 65 into 35. And Kirby Smart said it's still an issue. So those are issues. You had sexual assault allegations that Northwestern helped Kirby Smart just kind of under the rug,
that
right?
That was ridiculous. You suspend a guy for 2 weeks.
Right.
He's going to lawyer up. You can't do that. That one still blows my mind. That's got to be, that's just fumble in the bag. Completely.
Yeah, the president, yeah. Well, it came down to the president firing Pat Fitzgerald to keep his job.
Which should have just been done right away.
Right. Or suspended for a year.
Now it's going to court.
Right. And you're going to lose yourself about $200 million.
Yep.
The university. So, but then also, during that same news cycle, people were quietly calling for Kirby Smart's job because he was fostering kind of a mini, I wouldn't say on the same level as Baylor, but there's some guys on the team that just because, their football players have been doing the same things and kind of been getting away with it. But Northwestern came out, took over the news cycle. So what I'm saying is every school has had something going on, and it's just the way it is. The Gophers were playing them the first game of the season. A few years ago, they had the whole team with it it was like 2 guys, and they brought in like 22 guys, and they remember they were suspending them. They almost pretty much lost all their draftable players just for the simple fact of 20 extra guys were named in a sexual assault case, and they weren't even there.
Yeah.
But then you take a deep dive into the athletic program or the football program, the athletic program. They get rid of Jerry Keel. He didn't know anything. He got sick. Get rid of him. The guy that came in, and remember he was eating the ice cream pop during the game. What's his name? The defensive coordinator did a really good job. They loved him.
Let me look it up real quick.
They got rid of him just for the simple fact he was a part of it. And then they fall on PJ Fleck, who spent the first year of changing the expectations of all the players, right? You know what I'm saying? So kind of like a Matt Rule had to come in and change the way people acted.
Ed Dontel. There we go.
And so when PJ Fleck came in, one of the biggest things he did was he changed the way that the players represented themselves on campus, right? Everybody thought it was crazy. And I remember because I trained Blake Cashman and Carter Coughlin, who were from my high school. I trained them in the summer. He was like, we got to wear kind of like golf shirts or something. We can't be going in there with like flip-flops. We got to be in front of the class. We got to be attentive of everything. They wanted more involved in the community, change the expectations, right? A little rough, but it had a purpose for it, right? Same thing with Matt Rule's doing it right now. So we're going to go a quick break, come back at the end, put a wrap on the show, the fastest hour on a Sunday morning, on a rainy Sunday morning. This is Jay Foreman and Harrison. Again, Advanced Medical Imaging. We'll be right back. This is former Husker and NFL linebacker Jay Foreman. For years, I've suffered from degenerative problems in both of my ankles, but thanks to a thorough and thought-out plan provided by Advanced Medical Imaging, I was able to get my life back with the least amount of pain as possible. While working through multiple options, the team of physicians at Advanced Medical Imaging were there to answer any questions I had. If you're experiencing any pain at all and want to get your life back, go to amimaging.com or give them a call at 402-484-6677. Advanced Medical Imaging, located at 7601 Pioneers Boulevard.
On the Block with Strick and Austin.
Sometimes playing with a healthy fear is good because it makes you go, 100 out. Because the more tentative you are, I always told kids, I said, listen, if you don't like this and you don't want to play, don't play. Because you're going to be worse off and get probably hurt more by being tentative in your play as opposed to playing all out.
Weekdays from 2 to 4 on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. And Jay.
As long as it's taken for him to build up that program to be pretty successful by their standards and look, pretty successful by Big Ten West standards, you have to take that into accountability. You can't be an impulsive, in-the-moment type of decision maker, because how you handle Pat Fitzgerald could stymie you from hiring, because those coaches talk.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. The Ticket Water Cooler.
Typically, you kind of think of Nebraska as far as in-state recruiting as might not get the skill position players, but you can pepper in some offensive linemen and maybe a linebacker here and there. This class is led by its in-state skill position players now. I mean, you thinking down the line, you could 3 or 4 years from now have Daniel Kalen lining up with Davon Holland, Isaiah McMorris, and now Carter Nelson. Those are all your skill positions.
Keeping the highly talented, highly ranked players that are in the state with you at the home state school is a step in the right direction.
They are our love bugs and companions. They are our pets, our family, and they make life better. When we face unexpected challenges, so do our pets. That's why we're on a mission to support people and their pets. Whether donating a bag of kibble, sharing an Instagram post of a lost cat, or welcoming a foster pet into your home, every bit of kindness counts. Visit petsandpeopletogether.org to learn how to be a helper in your community. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
I know that a lot of times, Mom, it might not seem like I'm listening to you, but I am. I hear you. And what you say really does matter to me.
I mean, let's be honest. No kid likes rules, but I get why we have them. I hear you, and I know it's because you care.
For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Sponsored by DHHS and aired in cooperation with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Alexa, play 93.7 The Ticket.
Okay, playing 93.7 The Ticket.
Alexa, turn down the lights.
Dimming the lights.
Alexa, order a pizza. The big one. All the toppings.
Are you sure that's a good idea?
Alexa.
That's a lot of pizza for just one man.
Alexa, just do it. Stop judging me, just do it.
As you wish.
Thanks, Alexa. You're my best friend. Early break with Sip and Jake.
Quick question. Where does the term dog pop? 'Cause I've never seen a pile of dogs in my life. I've never seen that. If we've ever seen just driving down the road, it's like, well, there's 12 dogs on top of each other. So where does dog pile come from?
Well, that's a good question.
And that is a standard.
That's a good question.
If you say dog pile to anyone, they know it. It's not dog pile. Never seen a pile of dogs. Never in my life.
I want to know where that comes from.
Early break with Sip and Jake from 6 to 8 every weekday morning. Back to Inside the Huddle, sponsored by Advanced Medical Imaging. Here is your host, Jay Foreman.
We are back inside the Huddle. Jay Foreman, brought to you by Advanced Medical Imaging, 7601 Pioneers Boulevard. Quick wrap up here. We didn't get to get it. We need more hours, man. Me and Harrison have been talking about how we can make this more effectively and longer. We will be doing some other stuff in the future. At least I know I will, in different form of fashions, and that stuff will be coming out very shortly. But one of the best articles I've read, not the best because I hate reading this about people, is the coaching hot seats. And the thing about it, they have a rating system. It's like 5 the worst, right? And
it's usually like win or get fired.
Yeah, it's now or never. And there's 3 coaches. Then they have 4 and 3, and then 0, you're untouchable. Obviously, the 2 untouchables are Nick Saban and Kirby Smart. But we're gonna, I guess, what's always entertaining is who's on the 5, right? It's Tom Allen, Neil Brown, and Danny Gonzalez, right? And so we'll just deal with Tom Allen just because, number one, they have him the top at the 5, so he must be like a 5.9. He's super high. Indiana in the last 2 years, he has 2 Big Ten wins since 2021. And they said for him to keep his job, and obviously it really hurts a team like Indiana. They had a really good year during COVID, and they lost Michael Penix. Yeah. First of all, Michael Penix had all the expectations, came back and had that 3 interception game against Iowa, the first game of the year, and then he got hurt. Then he transferred to Washington. Now he's, in the Heisman race.
I'm pretty convinced he's gonna pop off in Washington.
Yeah, well, he popped off last year. Mm-hmm. He really looking to pop off this year. That sheds light on Tom Allen. At the beginning of the year, they had obviously a pretty good offense. Obviously, Nebraska did really well against them. Big up to Bill Bush and Mickey Joseph. Really, they say he has to be entertaining and better.
Mm-hmm.
And so
just give hope is what it
give
sounds
hope.
like.
Yeah.
Show some sort of progression.
Right.
Yeah.
And so Tom Allen, you're on it. The other guys on there too. Here's the one that's Dino Babers, which has a little bit of Nebraska connection. It's funny thing about it, he was steady Eddie. He was rated as a 4 last year. He's a 4 this year. So he's right there. He's getting hotter. But the other one that's most interesting that everybody talks about, there's 2 coaches to talk about when it comes to buyouts. Jimbo Fisher.
Yep.
And Mel Tucker. Both Jimbo Fisher is a 4. Oddly enough, Mel Tucker's a 3. Totally 2 different reasons, right? Jimbo Fisher had his first losing season since 2019. Is owed over $70 million, I think, in a buyout even after this year. He hired Bobby Petrino as his new offensive coordinator, who's well proven that can score points.
Mm-hmm.
Really good quarterback, great receivers. Texas A&M's roster is loaded. They got to do better, but they go on the road to Tennessee, LSU, and Ole Miss. So out of those 3 games, they at least got to win 1. 2 out of the 3, he keeps his job as long as he holds his head above water. All the other places. Mel Tucker's interesting because everybody profited off him, and he's the one that everybody points to. So he went 11-2. Then came back in 5-7, and you need somewhere in between there. So I think a 7-5 year, 8-4, 6-6 keeps him there. He's hard to. He was a 0. He was untouchable last year. Now you're a little bit touchable. When you're untouchable, that means you have to go through. If you think of mafia, you gotta meet 2 or 3 people before you get a meeting. Mm-hmm. Now somebody's coming right in. They're making times, and you better be on time. The funny thing, here's an interesting thing about Mel Tucker's situation before we sign off. The 2 biggest boosters are Matt Ishaba, the new owner of the Phoenix Suns, and Steve St. Andre, 2 billionaires. So
cheap billionaire. You look at that Suns history. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Well, he's the guy that just bought him.
Yeah.
But with the other guy, those 2 guys, he's in the 3rd year of a $95 million, 9.5. They're probably flipping a coin to see who's paying more of that. So it can happen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it'll happen. I think Michigan State's going to be a surprise team. I think he holds true. Jay Foreman, Harrison, brought to you by Advanced Medical Imaging. Appreciate you guys listening. We'll holler at you next week.